So best practice is still think about how you want to build this thing. In your mind, break it down into components and modules, and then prompt it for specific things so that you're still thinking analytically. You think about the architecture. You're thinking about, okay, I've got these different pieces. I want to be able to replace or I need to swap in different components. And so what should the architecture look like? Which parts should be modular and which parts should be part of the core? Which parts should be dependent on what the process needs to be, right? So that you're still thinking critically.
Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lin. Practical AI is brought to you by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool you can use to prune your models without loss in accuracy. Visualizing your model weights is akin to brain surgeon being able to find individual neurons and removing them without harm to the brain. Similarly, Pocket AI allows you to analyze and prune the weights in your model to select the right backbone model, get that model to actually work, make your model more stable, increase your model's accuracy, decrease the size of your model by up to 60%, and put that smaller model into production for half the cost. You no longer need to continue with endless brute force training and new model trials. Practical AI allows you to perform brain surgery on your models, making them smaller and better. Peter, what dropped yesterday, 24 hours ago, was Gemini. And so we want to just kind of hit that topic really quick. Gemini 3 came out and
Yeah.
it's doing really well. Tell us a little bit about what people are saying.
So yeah, basically they managed to get Gemini 3. A couple of things is one, at Google's announcement, they released their coding tool, which is anti-gravity. They released a new model, which is doing better on most of the benchmarks. And it's really scoring quite a bit higher than the previous versions of Gemini, which is a big improvement. So right
What
now
is
they are
this
beating.
humanities last exam part of it? This is
Yeah, so that's one of the popular benchmarks run by third parties.
okay.
And it scored pretty high, as you can see there.
It also scores very high on coding
Yeah.
too.
hmm
Um, they bought a company here, I guess. Is that
Right. Yep. So the anti-gravity co-editing thing, they bought the IP from another company and they kind of rebranded it and reskinned it and improved it. And that's anti-gravity now. So they're getting more serious about the coding game. So this is like their co-pilot competitor.
okay? Have you tried it at all? Do you know if it works at all?
I haven't yet, but I have been using Gemini for code, and it does seem better than GPT, but still not as good as Claude.
Okay. Claude's still kind of, at least for the coders, is kind of the go-to. And
Yeah, I mean, I find that the last 2, 3 years, Copilot and GPT really hallucinates like just random stuff. Like I'll ask it, like, how do I use this API? And it make stuff up. And I'm like, no, that doesn't exist.
yeah,
Like you said there's a function named this, it does not exist.
I sent you some code from Grok, and it pooped out too.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was crap.
it's just like that thing does not exist. You can't call this function that. And then when I tell it no, that function that doesn't exist, is yes, sorry, and then it gives me the same code again, and I'm like,
Yeah. Before we jump into sort of just one little thing you did with Gemini, on the coding front, is there marked improvement that's happening on the coding side where you think we will be able to see software development lifecycle get shortened and or eliminate, all these people from the IT department, or are we still just kind of moving people around?
good question. So I would say for boilerplate stuff, you could probably use Gemini for a lot of the cases, but you still need a human being because a lot of the code it generates might look good, but when you look more closely, it's still kind of crappy. So you still need a human being to go in and go, okay, all right. So this kind of sort of works, or it works, but it really needs to be organized and cleaned up so that it's something that's more manageable and maintainable. Now, some people might not care. Some people might just think, well, I'm just going to generate a new one if I need a new version. But then it's just constant churn of garbage code.
Okay. And then what What would it take for you? Let's just assume you use Claude for most of your coding. What would it take you or any normal developer to just switch over entirely to Gemini, for example?
It's still not there yet. Because I mean, still a lot of times where I'll give it a really long prompt saying, okay, do these steps in this way. And even if you give it like a whole paragraph, it will still hallucinate sometimes, or it'll get confused. Like if you try to do any coding with a library that has a new version that just came out the last year, most of the time it'll give you code for the old version that's already been kind of end of life, deprecated. It'll give you code for the old version, but then it won't work because that version's already been like dead. But if you tell it, no, use the newest version, half the time it'll go, oh yeah. Sorry about that. Here's code for the new version, but it still mixes like functions from the old version and the new version. Then you got to go through and clean it up.
One of the things that you and I have dealt with quite a bit over the last 20 years together is the documentation problem on the newer stuff, and the old stuff seems to do or have
Yeah.
a little bit more documentation, or Reddit threads and user groups and stuff like that. So you're saying that with the new AI coding, essentially, it's kind of running into the same problem where anything that's new is still kind of a little bit of a mystery.
Right. Because it's new, it hasn't seen enough samples of it to really know it well, right? So it's the same thing as a human being. If you gave a programmer that knows the old stuff, he says, all right, use the latest version. They're like, well, like half the stuff changed. Right. So that engineer has to go through and go like, okay, it used to be called this. What did they replace it with?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you two questions related to coding then. First question is, for intermediate coder, what do you recommend? What app do they, what AI tool do you recommend they use today?
So right now I would recommend Claude first and Gemini second.
Okay.
If you're doing stuff where it's a new language where you're kind of new to it, it's a great way to quickly learn kind of the basics of that language without having to spend 3 weeks or a month of reading through all the API. Because I mean, these days, like if you're a Java person learning Python, there's so many libraries. You in 3 weeks you can't learn enough. You can't read enough documentation to know what you need to know. And even then, you can't really retain it. So it's easier to say, okay, I need to do this specific thing for this specific function. And then you can then get the code you need for that. And then half the time it won't work complete, but it should be enough for you to go, oh, okay, so this is the general structure. These are the libraries I need to use. And then you can go through and debug it and fix it.
Okay. Now, second question then is, what sort of best practices are you following? How can people avoid like the traps or the promises traps, right, of coding with AI? Like, what are just general process or best practices that you recommend?
So the big thing that a lot of people have been saying, YouTubers especially, is don't use AI as your only tool and don't lean on it too much. Because what a lot of people have realized is it actually makes you dumber because then you stop actually thinking about your architecture and how to build things properly. If you just think, okay, I'm just gonna give it this prompt and it'll do a one shot and build a whole thing, that leads to brain atrophy. So our best practice is still think about how you want to build this thing. In your mind, break it down into components and modules, and then prompt it for specific things. So that you're still thinking analytically. You think about the architecture. You're thinking about, okay, I've got these different pieces. I want to be able to replace or I need to swap in different components. And so what should the architecture look like? Which parts should be modular and which parts should be part of the core? Which parts should be dependent on what the process needs to be, right? So that you're still thinking critically. You're not just like, give me an application for a timesheet, right? A better way would be, okay, I got a timesheet application. What do I need? I need a database. I need a front end. I need some business logic. So then prompt it to build those parts. Build me a business process module with these rules. I want the rules to be in a database. so that now you're thinking through the architecture, you're thinking through the components, and you're not just telling it, just do it all from you in one shot.
Perfect. All right, before we go, you were going to show us just a little fun thing you did with Gemini. I think you were playing with images and asking Gemini to kind of do some editing.
Yeah.
Tell
So
us a little bit about your thing and what your final opinion was of it.
so basically what I did was I wanted to take a picture of a room, in this case, a bathroom, and I wanted to remodel the bathroom. In this bathroom, I took a picture of the door with the bath and a shower curtain on the left, and there's a toilet and there's a wall and a window. And I thought, okay, well, I want to remodel the bathroom so that instead of a bathtub, I have a shower. So I started with like remove the door. And so it did that. And then I asked it to then make, so what it did was it actually removed the door, but then just made that part a wall. But clearly in the actual room, that's part of the bathtub.
You couldn't see
And I
that
said,
though in the original photo, right?
right. And so then I said, okay, make the shower curtain twice as wide. And it did. So then it fixed it so that now it's close enough to the proper width that the bathtub was. And then I said, okay, remove the shower curtain and replace it with a glass door. And then I did that. But it took me a few tries to get it to kind of remove the door and make the room the actual dimensions that it actually was. And so it's kind of a nice way to be able to mock up a room. If you got a living room and you want to remodel it, you can take a picture of your room, tell it remove the TV, remove the couch, and then you can upload a photo of a different couch and say, put the couch in the room. And it'll do that. And then you can kind of see what it'll look like.
Yeah, it's and this has been people have been doing this a little bit with ChatGPT and others. What I was impressed with that image is that the reflection in the glass was
Yeah.
impressive. The reflection of the glass as a mirror, not just an
Yeah.
inversion of the existing reflection. And then I thought it actually kind of designed sort of a modern looking
Yeah.
tile and shower. It actually looked pretty nice.
It wasn't perfect, but it looked pretty good.
So it sounds like the hassle was all the
The
prompting
prompting.
you had to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you have to know how to prompt it because if you do the wrong order, it ends up screwing the whole thing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, here we go. Another week, another leader in the AI field. And it's not just a 3 or 4 horse race either, especially if you include video. We've got all these sort of
Oh yeah,
Chinese
yep. And
companies
China
coming
is
out.
definitely changing the whole landscape.
Good. All right. Well, we'll talk again. Thanks again, Peter. We'll leave the links to this video here. And you can also follow us on Spotify. We are there. Remember, too, you can always listen to us at twice the speed. Peter and I talk slowly. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.